So my name is Will Eichhorn. I'm with the National Office at NCA. It is my pleasure today to introduce Jessica Knapp, who is a freelance writer, editor, consultant, and an adjunct instructor at Seattle University. For her presentation, "You Don't Have to Do What Everyone Else Is Doing: How to Carve Your Own Path When the Traditional Route Just Isn't For You." Jessica Knapp has a PhD in interpersonal communication from the University of Texas at Austin. She specializes in health communication and does strategic communication for a variety of health organizations, including Providence Hospital and Volpora Health. She also teaches strategic communication as an adjunct instructor at Seattle University. She has carved out a niche for herself in which she offers health-based writing and consulting that is person-centered and empathetic. Jessica is certified in trauma-informed yoga, which is reflected in much of her work. You can find samples of her work on her personal website, jessicaknapp.net. And let's give her a round of applause.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm really excited to see so many of you today, and I hope what I have to say is helpful for you, because this transition from academic work to doing other things can be really overwhelming, but there is hope, there is other work, there are opportunities on the other side. So I want to give you guys some practical tips, and I hope some things that are really actually helpful for you today. Some of the advice I give is going to be more oriented towards freelancing, because that's what I found to be helpful when I first started out, but it should also apply to doing other work. So I just want to say that I can't tell you exactly what will work for you. I am going to lean in more to what worked for me, because that's what I know. But the most important point I want to relay to you is, don't be afraid to be an individual and find your own path. Because what I have found was, the more that I leaned into who I was individually, the unique expertise I had, the unique person I was, the more people responded to, oh, you are different because you have a PhD and you have this expertise. Maybe you're a little quirky, maybe your personality is a little bit different, but that's the way people with advanced degrees are. So I find that really resonates and people respond to that. So what I'm going to talk to you about today are some tips for finding your unique offering, how to market yourself, how long this transition can take from struggling out there to really surviving and ultimately thriving, because we don't just want to pay our bills, we want to be able to go on vacation, hopefully buy a home someday, right? Be able to support children. Tips on how to charge, because you want to know what you can pay, right? What people will pay you and should pay you. And then how to do all this with confidence, how to feel good about yourself and feel like you are in charge of what you're doing as you make these changes. Okay, so finding what's unique about you. Every person in this room has unique expertise. You guys have or are pursuing advanced degrees. I guarantee you all have something unique to offer the world. And you need to find it, and that's what you're going to market yourself as if you go out as a freelancer. This is hard to do. So I have a PhD with a specialty in health communication, and I had to talk to other people to figure out that my specialty needed to be health, right? It sounds super obvious. It sounds like, well, duh, you should be health-focused in what you do. But it did not occur to me, because I was so panicked about, I have to pay rent, I have to buy food for my dog, right? Because I was so caught up in that I need to survive. I needed other people. So I really recommend that you get into getting informational interviews with people who are in fields that you want to get into, and ask some questions like, if you were talking to someone like me, what advice would you give them about what careers to get into, what expertise they have? Talk to people who know you really well and ask them what they think about your skills. I actually hired a career coach who specializes in helping people find their unique skills, and I can connect you with that person if anybody's interested. He was really helpful, and it was a little bit of an investment. I paid $300 for 3 hours of his time, but it was super helpful. And then I wrote a lot of journal entries distilling what I did. I revised my bio. I still revise it on a semi-annual basis, because every time I look at it, I think, I don't like that, I don't like that. But I also recommend talk to people who are outside of communication, because we live in this world where almost everybody we know professionally is an expert in communication. So we tend to downplay the advantage of what we do and what we know. And if you get out there and you talk to people who have business degrees, or people who are medical doctors or work in retail, they're going to be a lot more impressed with what you know and what you do. So talk to people who are outside of this communication world, so the input you're getting is not as insular. This process may take some time, and that's okay. And you may refine as you go. So it took me probably 6 months to get my initial idea, but still over the course of 3 years, I really distilled exactly what it was. So the idea of being person-centered in how I do my communication, that was a 3-year process to get that specific. Once you know what you do, you're going to want to market yourself. And I don't actually have a marketing plan, but my marketing comes in the form of just putting content out onto the internet. If you're good at social media, that's going to be super easy. Just use TikTok, Instagram, whatever social media you excel at. I am not good with social media. I'm pretty skilled with LinkedIn, which really helps if you freelance. LinkedIn is really good for freelancers, but I write longer pieces, and I will use platforms like Medium because I do health communication, and I also have chronic headache issues. I have posted on a site called The Mighty, which is for people who have chronic health issues. I put things on my website, and then I'll share them on LinkedIn. But this is called indirect marketing, where you post things out there and then you let the clients come to you. So I just recommend put content out there in whatever forum is good for you. Videos are great. If you are comfortable being on camera, just put your cell phone up somewhere steady, or put your computer camera up somewhere and create a video explaining what you do and what you're good at, and post it on YouTube. I've done that several times. Most of my videos have 20 hits, but I have one that has over 2,000 views. So you never know what people are going to resonate with. And this is one of my most important tips. This is the thing that helps me get business more than anything else. So a lot of times when we ask people for help, or when we're trying to get a job or trying to get a freelance connection, we will beat around the bush a little bit, or we will be a little bit vague and indirect, because that's the polite thing, right? And a lot of us have studied politeness. We know how to be polite, right? Throw away politeness. We're not being polite here, and this is an awkward thing to do. You're going to have to get used to that feeling of awkwardness. Just build up a thick skin. You need to blatantly ask for what you want. So when you are asking for work, just flat out ask people. Whether you send it in email or whether you're talking to someone in person, just tell them, hey, I'm looking for a job. Do you have any leads? Or I'm looking for freelance work, writing, this type of writing. Do you have anything? Do you have any leads? Do you know anybody? And just put it out there. So my goal when I put these asks out into the world is to make sure I never lose a job because somebody was unaware that I wanted it. I might lose a job because I'm not the right fit, because they had to give it to a friend, because they lost the budget, or they didn't have the job anymore. But I never want to lose it because the person with the job was unaware I wanted it. And if you go into freelance, or if you're on the job market, that should be one of your goals also. So because this is my best technique for getting work, I want to give you some actual language that I use, and I'm happy to share these slides with anybody after the presentation. So if it's a project, if I'm sending work for freelance, or an ask for freelance work, I will say something like, "Hi, Sarah," or whoever it is. "I always enjoy working with you. I'm scheduling my calendar for the first of the year, and I'm wondering if you have a need for any writing or editing that I could help with." And then I'll end the email. So I keep it short. I put in something a little complimentary, that I always enjoy working with them. Right now, I would be asking for the first of the year, because if I don't have work, I try to think about 6 or 8 weeks in advance, because that's when I start getting panicky about, oh no, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills if I don't have work for then. And this, it sounds really simple, but this is my best way to bring in new business. And I would do this with, if I were cold calling a client or cold pitching over email, I would do something very similar to this too. And instead of saying, "I've always enjoyed working with you," I might say, "I really love your product," or "I really like your website. I'm wondering if you have any needs for editing, or if you want to talk about editing work that I could help you with." Something else that works really well for me is just grabbing coffee or lunch with people I've worked with in the past who are in industries that I'm interested in. And this sounds a little manipulative, right? But I'm actually connecting with people that I really do legitimately want to connect with. The way it becomes helpful for me and my business is that I make sure when I am out with them, I do that blatant ask. So I actually do tell them, "Hey, by the way, I want to make sure you know this is the type of work I'm doing right now. And if you have that work available, or you know anybody who is, please make sure you think of me. Or I'd love if you send somebody my way." And instead of just, in the past, I don't know if other people do this, but I might have just thought, "Oh, they connected with me, they'll infer that I'm interested in work from them," right? You have to blatantly say it directly, and that's how you get the connections. In my experience, going from struggling to pay the bills as a freelancer to actually surviving and then thriving takes about 3 years. So just to give you realistic expectations, and things will improve over the course of that time. So you won't be struggling desperately the entire time, but it does take some time to build a successful freelance business. So in this time, you will be finding the clients that you want. You will be letting go of the wrong clients. You will be finding exactly what you want to do and who you are as a freelancer. So while you're in this process, I recommend that you do a few things. Sorry, my mouth is dry. I really recommend that you learn to negotiate. Anybody on the job market, it's helpful to learn to negotiate. But as a freelancer, you are going to be negotiating a lot, because you're going to negotiate all your contracts, every bit of work you do. All the money that comes in to your bank account is going to be brought in by you. So the more you know about how to negotiate successfully, the better off you will be. I'm happy to point you towards some free resources if anybody would like some tips. But even little practical things like, it's helpful to ask for 20% more than you actually want, so you have room to be negotiated down. If you can find career mentors in the field you want to be in, that's going to be really helpful. So for me, it was creative services, people who do writing, design, those types of tasks. People who can help guide you who aren't in academia is really helpful. Find ways to make money that will pay your bills, that don't take a lot of time. If you have an adjunct role that will rehire you every quarter without you having to reapply, that can be great. But if you have an adjunct situation where you're having to reapply and find new work every quarter, you might think about, can I find another adjunct role? Is there something outside of academia that can support me? Think about paying bills in ways that are good for your lifestyle and good for your bank account, less than like fulfilling our egos. So I took a retail job during this time to help pay my bills because it was steady income and I didn't have to think about it. If you adjunct teach, and again, you have to do what works for you, right? So I can't tell you what to do. But what I did was I taught no more than one class a quarter or semester because I didn't want to spend too much time wrapped up in teaching. I wanted to be able to invest in other activities. And for my adjunct class, I brought in guest speakers who I could network with and could potentially get work from. They were definitely people who were valuable to the students, right? I was teaching a strategic writing class, so it was easy to overlap. So don't bring in people who aren't of value to your students, of course. But if there are people who you can also talk to and they can get you connections in the world that you want to be in, that's a great way to maximize your time. Okay, so in terms of charging, if you work with organizations or if you provide a freelance service to a company or an organization, there's a bias out there that if you publish your rates, you are not professional. So you probably don't want to publish your rates if you work for an organization. If you go to my website, you will notice I don't publish my rates. I'm happy outside of this presentation, offline, to share what I charge because I think being transparent about our wages only helps everybody get ahead. But I don't publish them because organizations have this weird bias in their head that you're not professional if you do. If you work with individual people, it's probably a good idea to publish your rates because individual people hiring for services have a bias in their head that if your rates are not published, they can't afford you. So if you're like a personal trainer or something like that and they don't have rates on their website, we probably tend to think, oh, they're really expensive. So that's a general rule of thumb. It might differ a bit by field. And then my experience, this probably differs by field some, but my experience has been if you find people who are in the same general area as you, that they'll tell you what they charge and you can get a sense of what people in the field charge for what they do. I'm sure there are some industries where people are not as open to sharing, but at least in writing, editing, creative services, people have been pretty open to sharing rates. And again, if you want to know, hit me up after the presentation and I'm happy to share my rates. So how do we do this with confidence? This is a really vulnerable thing to do because you don't have the backing of an organization. You don't have a paycheck automatically going into your bank account every 2 weeks or every month. It's a hard thing to do just flat out, and then how do you do it in a way where you feel really confident and strong? One of the things I recommend is that you embrace whatever weird stuff helps you. So I find that as I get more and more into freelance, sorry, that's small print there for you guys in the back. I get more and more into any weird stuff that helps me. So this is one of the reasons why I've been into yoga, is because yoga gives me confidence, right? So I know when I'm in a meeting and someone's trying to negotiate me down on money, I remember what it feels like to do a headstand. And I think, I can do a headstand. You think I'm intimidated by you wanting me to cut my rate by $20 an hour? Please, you are not scary, right? So I think anything you can do to make yourself feel strong like that. I also will do things like weightlifting. I go to saunas because that helps me feel confident. I use crystals, which I have a PhD. I know there's no actual power in the crystals, but they make me feel good. I like aromatherapy, hiking. I'll do solo dance parties before and after big meetings. Know who your supportive friends are. Anything that makes you feel good, don't devalue it, lead into it, because these are helpful. I think it's essential if you freelance to have a hobby that you're really invested in for a couple of reasons. This is going to give you something that makes you feel like you're having successes and failures that are completely unrelated to your career. So you have a whole nother narrative to tell yourself about your life that has nothing to do with how well or how poorly your business is doing. Also, when you're freelance, it's really easy to get consumed by your work and do nothing but work and sleep and eat. And if you are really also passionately interested in another hobby, so for me, it's yoga. I have another friend who's a freelancer who's really into knitting. I know a lot of people who hike. I think it's essential to have a hobby. So I know this is non-traditional advice, but this is really helpful stuff if you want to be confident and feel good as you go through these processes. You have to have strong boundaries if you're going to freelance, and this is harder when you first start out. But one thing you need to do is you have to let go of the bad clients, because they will just take down the entire enterprise. You're going to learn as you start doing this type of work what depletes you. Different types of clients are draining to different people. So for me, I really can't tolerate the clients who make me feel guilty when I try to invoice. That's my absolute deal breaker. For other people, it's clients who pay late at all. For some, it's clients who don't respect their expertise enough. And I don't like any of that stuff. But for me, the absolute deal breaker is if they start trying to make me feel guilty when I send the invoice. So I just kind of file that away and know, okay, next time you ask for work, the answer is going to be no. So you have to know that stuff about yourself and be prepared to say no. And it's really hard to do, and it's a privilege to be able to do that, right? You may not feel like you can in the beginning, and that's okay. I've taken clients that I felt like I shouldn't be taking. But think about when you're at a place to say no to those clients and start learning what clients you want to say no to. So really, if you take this path, I recommend that you embrace everything that makes you different, because it's going to give you strength and confidence, but it's also going to help people respond to you, because we are different. When we go out into the business world, we have PhDs, and the business world sometimes doesn't know how to react to us, but when they see us and they understand, oh yeah, this is an experienced, educated PhD, they're a little quirky, they're a little different, I think that helps them resonate with us. And also, once you are on this path of freelance, you can free yourself from those constant comparisons to other people's careers, because your career is not like anybody else's. You're no longer on tenure-track or thinking about, like, I'm not making as much as this person by this age, or I haven't reached this many publications as that person by that age, because you're doing your own unique thing. Nobody else has a career like yours, and I think that's empowering. That makes me feel good, is knowing that my career is totally different, and it has freed me up from a lot of those comparisons to other people that I used to do. So now I will take questions if anybody has questions. Thank you, guys. Oh, yeah. So the question is about what contracts look like? Yeah, so I usually let the client send me the contract first, and then I will read through it and see what I agree with and don't agree with. I'm to be honest, I'm not super picky about the contracts. I know other freelancers who are. Usually the writers I know who are more in journalism are very picky about contracts, because in journalism, they take the rights of your publications, and you might want to use the publications for a book or something later. So that is something to be aware of if you go that route. I will watch for if they want to put in there that non-compete clauses, because that can be really tricky in healthcare, because depending on how that gets interpreted, everything that I do could be competition with the client. And then I will make sure that it's a 30-day turnaround for payment. It doesn't happen a lot in the business world. That's another thing that's more likely in journalism, is they push the payment window out to 60 days, 90 days. But usually they'll send the contract and I'll make sure that I'm okay with it. I sign it, I send it back. I don't use a lawyer. I've been pretty lucky with contracts so far. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Okay. So the question is about putting content out there and how I learned how to do that. So the first place, I think I just put things on my website. I have a blog on my website, and then I would share those posts on social media. But I'm not great at social media, so I didn't get a lot of reaction to that. I would share them on LinkedIn. I have more followers on LinkedIn, so that worked better for me. Also, the people who are on LinkedIn, a lot of times I find are actually looking for freelancers and work like that. So I do sometimes get freelance work through LinkedIn. And then I have posted things on Medium, and Medium works really well for me. You can just post things on Medium and just flat out create a post and post it. And then sometimes it gets hardly any reaction. Sometimes it will kind of go viral and you'll get a lot of attention. There are also official publications on Medium you can submit to. So you can be as loose or as formal as you want on Medium. The other one I used was The Mighty, which is just THE and then the word mighty. And if you have any chronic health condition, or know anyone with a chronic health condition, or you can publish there, and you have to submit, but my experience is they want content, so it's a pretty easy bar to get accepted there, I think. Yes. So Grace asked, what's the shift that got me out of tenure track and how I stay motivated? So I had a tenure track job, and it was in a small rural town, and it was a small TG school that also had a medical school, and it was kind of perfect, like what I thought I wanted all the way through my studies. And I realized the first year in it, I was miserable and hated it. So I left after the first year, and it was a really tough decision, but I was thinking I might be in, I don't want to get caught up in the sunk cost fallacy, where if I stay here for multiple years, I might just keep staying because I feel like I've put in this much time, and they were already talking about making me chair in a few years because the person who was chair didn't want to stay chair, and I just felt like I have to leave now. And I started applying for full-time jobs, and what I think happened was a lot of people were looking at my resume and feeling like I was overqualified because I had this PhD, but I also looked underexperienced because I hadn't been in the business world for 6 or 10 years. So they just kind of looked at my resume and didn't know what to do with it, and so they just tossed it in the recycle bin. And I had some contacts who would bring me in or offer me freelance work, just kind of almost just to be nice, like, well, I know you can write, so here, take this writing job. And then I got connected to a couple other jobs that had a little bit more consulting and other things, and I started finding that once I got in the door and could actually talk to people and explain the expertise I have, that they responded to me, and then they understood, oh, these communication skills are really valuable and could really help our organization. So on paper, it didn't really resonate, but when I could actually get in the room and have a conversation with people, they were really excited about what a communication person could do for them. So it wasn't so much that I decided initially, I want to freelance, I don't want to do full-time work, but I had started having a little bit of success at freelance, and then I just kept having more and more and more success, and the traditional job applications were just going nowhere. And initially I still kept putting in traditional job applications, but they just weren't doing anything. And then eventually I just went full force toward the freelance and dropped the job applications. And great question about what keeps me going. For me, I really have passion about helping improve communication in healthcare. I have a chronic health condition. It's called Chiari malformation, where my skull pushes into, you know it? All right. My skull pushes into my cerebellum. And so I have a lot of doctor's appointments and have had surgery and have had good communication and bad communication in healthcare. And so that keeps me going when this gets tiresome or frustrating, is the idea that I feel like ultimately I'm doing something that's really helpful. One of my clients does breast cancer screening work, and they feel like they're really doing good work in the world to me. That's a lucky situation. Some of my clients are just doing like really boring bureaucratic stuff, right? I don't always have that, but remembering that keeps me going. I know other freelancers who love the flexibility this lifestyle affords them, right? You might have days where you work 12 hours, but then on a Tuesday, if you're fed up and frustrated, you can take off and go for a hike, or, go see your family, or do something else, or take a nap if you want. But, or you can work the weekend and take off midweek. So some people, just knowing they have that flexibility keeps them going. So I think finding passion about what you're doing, whether it's the lifestyle you have or the work that you do. Did that answer your question? Okay, yeah. Yeah. So Sierra asked what I recommend publishing. So for example, she suggested a training manual or the entire training. I have put entire trainings up on YouTube, or you might do like a little clip of the training if you want to keep the whole training locked down so people will pay for it. I might do like a couple of worksheets that I have done from a training. The other thing that I do is I might do like a story about someone who benefited from the training and publish that, because people really love stories. So if I can tell a story and put that on my website or put that out somewhere, I think people really respond to that. And then because I focus on person-centered communication and I try to connect healthcare professionals to empathy, I really like telling stories. So for me, the more I can get that aspect of whatever I'm doing out into the world, that works really well for me. I also publish essays about things that I'm going through personally. I don't mind being vulnerable that way, right? And because I'm doing empathetic communication, I find that brings the right clients to me. Also, I think clients and people in general respond to people who aren't afraid to be human beings. So the extent to which you don't mind sharing about yourself, right? I mean, there are definitely parts of myself that I don't share, right? But I don't mind sharing about my health struggles. I don't mind sharing, about like things I learned through yoga training, things like that. And I find people usually resonate with that. They enjoy hearing, maybe enjoy is the wrong word, but they can see themselves, right? And it's nice for people to be able to see like, oh yeah, that's another human being who experienced something similar to what I went through. And that was really interesting and great for me to read. So I'll put stuff like that out there too. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go to her and then I'll go to you. Yeah. The question is like for a training, how you price in the work you do before. So if I'm giving someone an estimate, I try to estimate how many hours it's going to take me to prepare for the training, and I include that in my hourly rate. And then also you include the training in your hourly rate. So if you're doing a training for somebody, it's going to be quite expensive compared to just if somebody asks you to show up for an hour of consulting, right? So we're talking like $1,000 to $2,000 and on up, depending on what you charge. And then if you do trainings where you offer them just out in the world, online, and you want multiple people to register, right? Sometimes I might charge like, depending on how long they are, maybe like $125 per participant, and then you are just hoping enough people show up that it's worth your time. Yeah. And that's where you're taking a little bit more of a risk, right? But if you're working for an organization that's paying you for the training, definitely estimate how many hours it will take you to prepare for that and calculate every single hour in and multiply it by your hourly rate. Yeah. Other questions? All right, I'm gonna look up I don't know my LinkedIn by heart, but I'm gonna look it up. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.